What if I told you that you don't actually live in a democracy? What if everything you thought about freedom, choice, and control was just a carefully designed illusion? What if the real power in this world doesn't come from governments, armies, or even corporations, but from something much simpler, much quieter, and hiding in plain sight? Before I show you exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what you're about to learn, they definitely don't teach in school. And if you want to understand the real game being played, you'll want to stick around this channel. All right, let's get into it. You wake up, you go to work, you get paid, you buy stuff, you pay your bills, rinse and repeat. That's life, right? But here's the thing nobody talks about. You're not just living your life. You're living inside a system, a financial system. And that system decides everything. Who wins wars, who builds empires, who gets rich, and who stays broke for their entire life. This system doesn't need a king. It doesn't need an army. It doesn't even need to threaten you. It rules through something way more powerful, your compliance. And the craziest part? Most people never even notice it exists. Welcome to Monetary Archaeologist, where we dig up the buried truths about money, power, and history. Because nothing is ever as simple as it looks. Let's start with what you were taught in school. Money is a tool, right? It's just a way to measure value, a way to trade your time for food, shelter, and Netflix subscriptions. It's neutral, fair, simple. Yeah, that's the myth. What if money isn't just a tool? What if it's a weapon? A control system designed not to measure value, but to extract it from you and me, and funnel it upward to a very small group of people. Now I know what you're thinking. Here we go, another conspiracy theory. But hold on, this isn't about conspiracy. This is about history. Cold, hard, documented history. And the truth is, the story of how money came to rule the world isn't about evil villains twirling their mustaches. It's about centuries of brilliant engineering by merchants, kings, and bankers who figured out how to turn thin air into power. Let me take you back, way back. For most of human history, money was real. I mean literally real. Gold, silver, salt, grain. Things you could touch, weigh, and store under your bed. If you wanted more money, you had two options. Earn it or take it. Simple. But then someone asked a dangerous question. What if money didn't have to be real? What if it just had to be believed? Mind blown. This idea first showed up in China around 1,000 years ago during the Song Dynasty. The empire got so massive that moving metal coins around became impossible. Too heavy, too slow. So the government tried something wild. They printed paper notes. Just slips of paper that said, hey, trust us, this is worth something. And you know what? It worked. For a while. The economy exploded. Merchants got filthy rich. But here's the problem with fake money. If you print too much of it, people stop believing. And when belief dies, so does the currency. The whole thing collapsed. The experiment ended, but the idea didn't die. It just went to sleep. Fast forward a few centuries to medieval Europe. Italian merchants in cities like Florence and Venice were getting rich off trade. But there was a problem. Carrying gold across bandit-filled roads, that's a good way to lose your gold and your life. So they invented something genius, letters of credit. Basically fancy IOUs. You deposit gold in one city, get a piece of paper. Travel to another city and trade that paper for gold there. Safer, faster, brilliant. But here's where it gets interesting. These merchants realized something. Paper can multiply in ways gold never could. That was the birth of the big illusion, separating money from physical reality. And nobody exploited this better than the Medici family. In the 1400s, the Medici family basically ran Europe's economy from their bank in Florence. They financed kings, they financed popes, they financed wars. They didn't swing swords, they swung credit. They also pioneered something called double-entry bookkeeping. Sounds boring, right? Wrong. This changed everything. Because for the first time ever, you could create money with a pen instead of a pickaxe. Every loan became an asset. Every debt became wealth on paper. The Medici didn't just track money, they manufactured it. And in doing so, they quietly replaced kings with bankers. But they were just the beginning. Swampy country called the Dutch Republic figured out how to turn trade into empire. They invented the joint stock company. The most famous? The Dutch East India Company. Here's how it worked. They sold shares to regular people, pooled everyone's money, built a fleet of ships, sailed around the world, conquered islands, sold spices, made absurd profits, and everyone who bought a share got a cut. Suddenly, ordinary citizens could invest in global domination without leaving their living rooms. You didn't need to work anymore to get rich. You just needed to own a piece of the machine. The company became richer than entire kingdoms, and for the first time, the line between government and corporation disappeared. England saw this and said, "Hold my tea." The British East India Company took the Dutch model and turbocharged it. They didn't just trade goods, they had their own armies. They collected taxes. They governed entire countries. They even printed their own money. Think about that. A company, not a government, ruling millions of people. And behind it all, London, the new center of global finance. The British Empire wasn't just about flags and warships. It was about balance sheets and interest rates. But the real game changer came in 1694. England was broke. They'd been fighting expensive wars and ran out of money. So the government made a deal with a group of private bankers. The deal went like this. Lend us money, and in return, we'll let you create a bank that can print paper notes backed by our debt. And just like that, the Bank of England was born. Here's the beautiful, twisted genius of it. The more the government owed, the more money the bank could print. Debt wasn't a weakness anymore. It was the engine. War was no longer limited by how much gold you had in the vault. You could fight forever, as long as people believed in your paper. From that moment on, bankers and kings weren't separate. They were partners. And honestly, the bankers had the upper hand. By the 1700s, the architecture was complete. Gold was still important, sure, but paper was the reality. Every banknote was a promise, a claim on metal stored somewhere far away that you'd probably never see. And it worked because people agreed not to ask too many questions. As long as everyone believed, the machine could grow forever. Then came the 1800s, the Industrial Age, and with it the rise of banking dynasties. The Rothschilds in Europe, the Morgans in America, the Barings in London. These families didn't just lend money, they brokered peace treaties. They funded revolutions. They financed both sides of wars. Their real product? Trust. They understood that money was never about metal. It was about confidence. And confidence could be manufactured, bought, and sold. Here's the pattern. Every time there was a crisis, the bankers stepped in to rescue the situation. Governments went broke. Bankers bailed them out in exchange for more control. Markets crashed. Bankers stabilized them for a price. By the end of the 1800s, nations still existed. Borders were still on maps. But the real empire was financial. The flags were just decoration. The credit was the real power. In 1913, the United States, this rising superpower, created the Federal Reserve. Officially, it was supposed to stabilize the economy and protect the people. In reality, it gave private banks the authority to issue public money. Let that sink in. The government no longer created currency. It borrowed it, with interest, from private institutions. Printing money became government policy. And democracy? It became debt management. Then came World War II. When the dust settled, world leaders met in 1944 in a place called Bretton Woods. Their mission? Build a new financial order. They decided the US dollar would be the anchor of global trade, backed by gold. Every other currency would be pegged to the dollar. On the surface, it looked like stability. But in reality, it made the entire world dependent on American policy. Whoever controlled the dollar controlled the system. And then, in 1971, President Nixon did something wild. He ended the gold standard. Just cut the cord. The dollar was no longer backed by anything. Not gold, not silver, just belief. Fiat money was born. Money backed by nothing but faith. And in that moment, money became pure abstraction. Power became invisible. For the first time in human history, the system didn't need actual resources to grow. It just needed credit. Governments borrowed to spend. Corporations borrowed to expand. People borrowed to live. And the world kept spinning, not on wealth, but on debt. That's the trap. It's so big, so interconnected, that it doesn't need a conspiracy. It just needs participation. Every paycheck, every credit card swipe, every mortgage payment. You're feeding it. You can't see it, but you feel it. In the rising cost of living. In the anxiety that no matter how hard you work, you're never really getting ahead. Look around. Every modern life is built on debt. Students borrow to get educated. Workers borrow to buy homes. Governments borrow to keep the lights on. And the more everyone borrows, the more power flows to the people who create the money. It's a cycle. New debt pays off old debt. New credit creates new power. And every dollar of interest flows upward to the institutions that can create money faster than you can ever earn it. You can't see the people who run this system because they don't look like rulers. No crowns, no thrones, just suits, spreadsheets, and board meetings. They rule through numbers, not laws. The government spends. The central bank prints. The market inflates. And you pay the bill. Not through taxes you can see, but through inflation. That's the quiet theft. The slow erosion of your time, your labor, your savings, disguised as rising prices. We think inflation is random, an accident, bad luck. It's not. It's design. It's how the system resets without ever saying the word default. Inflation punishes savers, it rewards debtors, and it keeps the wheel spinning. Every decade, the middle class loses a little more. The wealthy? They own assets that rise with inflation. They never lose. Remember 2008, the financial crisis? The whole system nearly collapsed under its own weight. And what happened? Did the people responsible go to jail? Did the system get reformed? Nope. Governments printed trillions of dollars overnight. They called it quantitative easing. But really, it was a bailout. Not for you, not for the people who lost their homes. For the banks. The same institutions that caused the crash. Money was created out of nothing to save everything. And people accepted it. Because what choice did they have? You can't revolt against the currency you're paid in. You can't fight the bank that holds your mortgage. The system doesn't survive through force. It survives through dependence. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The next evolution is already here. Digital money. Central bank digital currencies. CBDCs. They're being tested all over the world right now. Governments say it's about efficiency, convenience, transparency. But here's what they don't say. It erases the last bit of privacy you have. Every transaction tracked, every purchase recorded, every account programmable. Money that can be frozen with a keystroke, redirected, deleted. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's policy. It's happening. This is the endpoint of a 700-year journey. From gold coins to credit cards, from handwritten ledgers to blockchain algorithms. The same control mechanism just perfected. In this new world, freedom becomes conditional, not by force, but by design. A system where your behavior determines your access, where compliance is coded in, where your social score replaces your sovereignty. And because it's efficient and convenient, people will accept it. Just like they accepted paper money. Just like they accepted central banks. Just like they accepted the idea that debt equals growth. That's how the trap works. It doesn't demand submission. It makes submission comfortable. Here's the twist most people miss. There's no villain, no evil mastermind, just momentum.
The system runs on incentives so powerful that good people follow them without thinking. Politicians chase growth because voters demand it. Banks create credit because markets reward it. Consumers borrow because survival requires it. The cycle continues not because of greed, but because of gravity. That's the genius. The trap isn't outside you, it's inside you. Built into your ambitions, your habits, your hopes. Every time you borrow, spend, or save in a currency you don't control, you participate. Every time you measure success in dollars instead of value, you reinforce the very system you hate. But here's the good news. No system lasts forever. History proves it. Every empire built on paper money eventually collapses. Rome debased its currency until soldiers refused to be paid in coins. The French monarchy printed money until the people revolted. The British pound ruled the world until the cost of empire became too much. Every time, the pattern is the same. Belief breaks. And when it does, the people who survive aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who understand what money actually is. Not wealth, trust, not power, agreement. The moment that agreement shatters, the system resets. And those who saw it coming, they rebuild. We might already be there. Debt is at historic levels. Inflation is baked in. Nations borrow just to pay interest on old loans. Productivity is flat while paper wealth explodes. The illusion holds, but only because most people have known anything different. So how do you escape? You can't destroy the system.
But you can outgrow it, learn its rules. Stop confusing digital numbers with real value. Build things the system can't print. Skills, knowledge, relationships, real assets, independent thinking. The more of those you own, the less control it has over you. Because the one currency the system can't inflate is awareness. Money rules the world because we let it. But history shows us that every system that rules eventually falls. And when this one breaks, and it will, the people who understand the past won't be victims. They'll be the architects of what comes next. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but if you don't understand it, it'll crush you all the same. If this changed how you see the world, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell, because here at Monetary Archaeologist, we dig up the truths they buried. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look. See you in the next one.